All right, one of the interesting results of this last round of elections, and remember, everybody, Israel in the last year or so has gone to 3 elections, and that's why even with this inflated and strange government that we're having, Israelis prefer that to having to go to a 4th election. So we have the Yamina Party, which literally means right. This is a bloc, the Yamina bloc, that has said that they are not going to join this government, and we're going to find out why. And they have gone to sit in the opposition where the Arabs are and the left wing is. So we're scratching our heads trying to figure out what is the strategy that the Yamina Party, or the Yamina bloc, I should say, has by doing this. And our guest today is Jeremy Saltan. He's a Knesset insider, political and poll analyst at www.knessetjeremy.com. And you can also follow him on his Twitter account where he's very active, and it's called The Jeremy Man, all one word, The Jeremy Man at Twitter. Now, Jeremy was the number 10 on the list of the Hayamin HaChadash, the New Right Party, headed by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. And he was number 18 on the Yamina list for the March 2020 elections for the Knesset that we just had. He's a leading political analyst. He's a regular contributor on radio and television, and he is one of Israel's top poll analysts. So, welcome to the show, Jeremy Saltan.
It's great to be back, Tamar. Thanks for having me.
Very good to have you on. I'm very, very curious, and so are our listeners, to understand why the right-wing party, which had an agreement. I mean, Bibi before the elections was talking about the right-wing bloc, and we have to have a strong right-wing bloc. And then after the elections, all of a sudden, it's not looking that way. So how do you explain all of this?
Well, what happened was on April 20th, there was, I guess you can say in many ways, a historic unity deal that was signed between Benny Gantz, the head of the left-wing Blue and White Party, of course, the person who competed against Netanyahu for the premiership in the 3 elections over the last year and a half, between him and Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of the right-wing bloc. Once that happened, we did not really have a lot of contact, unfortunately, with the prime minister. He made a decision that because we need a government, that he was going to listen to a lot of the requests that were put on him by the left. Of course, as members of the right-wing bloc, we were very, disturbed to see that Amir Peretz and Itzik Shmueli, 2 MKs from the Labor Party, would get ministries in economy as well as welfare, and that the left-wing Blue and White Party would also get very important areas in terms of ministries. We're looking at the defense portfolio that went to Gantz. Ashkenazi, who got foreign justice, went to Avi Nissenkorn, the former labor trade union head, and of course other important areas such as communications, tourism. Really, a lot of the main portfolios of the government went over to the left. So what ended up happening at that point was Naftali Bennett had 2 questions for the prime minister. One is, what is the direction that this government is going in? And the second one was, what influence will we have in this government? Because really, without those 2 things, you don't know if you can join a coalition. Now, the response that we got was that indeed the direction was going to be a unity government, which meant going ahead and compromising on a lot of the values that we felt very dear to. And, that was a very, very difficult pill for us to swallow. But we said, if we're still going to be able to be given influence in key areas, that is something that we will try to consider. And we were asked what areas of influence we would be given within the next government. And unfortunately, there was not one meeting between Naftali Bennett and Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister. There were some Skype conversations, there were a few phone conversations, but there was no actual deal that was to be had. There were no negotiating teams that were submitted to us to be able to go ahead and work on details. And it became very clear to us that in terms of influence, that we would not be given a very big part of the pie when it comes to the next government. So we got to very much the last few days right before the inauguration of the new government, in which Benjamin Netanyahu decided to go ahead and reach out to Rav Rafi Peretz, who is a member of the Yamina alliance that we ran together with, and he invited him to go ahead and to join without the rest of the bloc, and indeed that's what he went ahead and did. So the Yamina bloc unfortunately broke up, and Rav Rafi Peretz joined the coalition, and Bezalel Smotrich of the National Union and Naftali Bennett, Ayel Shaked, and Yamina Chadash, we along with Smotrich, remain right now in the opposition. And for us, again, that's unfortunate, but it seems that both the Prime Minister was not so interested in bringing us in, as well as the issue that it does not seem like the direction that this government is going in is one that really shares our values or those of our constituents.
Now, Jeremy, true or false, some people are saying that there's bad blood between the Netanyahus and Naftali Bennett. And when I say Netanyahus, I mean including Sarah. They say that Sarah, the wife of Bibi Netanyahu, does not like Bennett. True or false?
You know, I don't really get into those personal things. I think that what voters care about is their interests, the issues that really drive them. I think that there's a lot of play that we see within the media about relationships, but I can tell you, especially when it comes to Avigdor Lieberman, for instance, this is a guy who is probably one of the most hated people in Balfour, as people like to say. That's code for whatever happens in the Prime Minister's residence, which is on Balfour Street. And yet we saw times in which Lieberman was given the most coveted positions, and of course, very close to Netanyahu. Of course, we're very far from that today, but the point is that when it becomes politically worthwhile, we see very, very close relationships. I can tell you before April 20th, Naftali Bennett, he was, of course, the outgoing defense minister who served the last 7 months as defense minister of the state of Israel before Benny Gantz took over. And that is, of course, the top ministerial position within the government under the prime minister. And there was no issue in appointing him to that position or him serving in that position. Of course, before April 20th, many times you would see Netanyahu and Bennett in the same time frame. They worked very well together. And I understand that there are people that want to go ahead and put some focus on whatever supposed personal animosity there is, but I don't think that's the main issue when it comes to formation of a government. I think it simply was that because of the deals that were signed with the left-wing Labour Party, the left-wing Blue and White Party.
Okay, let me stop you here because
party, there was no room for us.
Okay, yeah. We only have like 2 minutes left, and I want to ask you about the strategy. What is the strategy of the Yamina Party now that it's in the opposition?
The strategy is to provide a right-wing alternative. Like I said, this is a unity government. This is not a right-wing government. Netanyahu broke up the right-wing bloc in order to form this government. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, again, represent our constituents. We're going to look out for the values and interests of the right-wing bloc, because unfortunately everyone else that are in the government are not going to be able to live up to those values. They've compromised a lot, and we're going to be here to keep Netanyahu and the rest of that government honest. We're going to go ahead and provide a clear path of what it is that a government in Israel should be doing according to, again, the right-wing values.
How does that pertain to sovereignty? Because Bibi says, stay in the government with me. We're going to apply sovereignty to parts of Judea and Samaria. Trump is with us. Why isn't he? Go ahead.
First of all, it's not a question of coalition or opposition. We're obviously going to support that move when that comes. Hopefully it does. We're not so convinced that it will happen for a couple reasons. One, we asked for clarification. What is this sovereignty vote? Is it going to be with the Trump plan? Do we have to agree to a Palestinian state? Are we looking at 30% as the Trump plan says? Is it just the Jordan Valley? Amir Peretz gave a statement that it's only going to be Gush Etzion. Is it going to be the settlements? We asked for clarity on that issue. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister did not tell us. So I don't exactly know what vote will be, but assuming there will be a vote on sovereignty, we will go ahead and vote in favor. I'm just not so sure that is going to happen unfortunately, because we've heard public statements by Gans Ashkenazi and other members of left-wing blocs saying that they're going to try to put the brakes on that. So we're going to do what we can, again, providing a right-wing alternative from the opposition to put pressure on the government to apply sovereignty.
All right. And so the strategy is basically just to make itself, when it's in the opposition, to make itself known as we are the right. We're going to look out for the rights and the interests of the right wing in Israel.
Again, when you're in the coalition, you have to make compromises. And when you're part of the governing coalition, you go ahead and you do that in order to be able to shed some of the influence. What we are right now is an opposition. That means that we're allowed to speak the truth, speak truth to power day in, day out, and tell the government where it is that they need to be. And unfortunately, we're very skeptical that we're going to go in the right direction, and we're going to do what we can to pull them and influence them to the right. Many times from the opposition, you can,
Jeremy,
in fact, influence more than the coalition.
Jeremy, I want to thank you for coming on. Very interesting what you had to say. I hope that Yamina does a good job wherever it's sitting. Right now it's in the opposition. It should keep the government to the right and towards the interests of the right wing. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. Again, you can follow Jeremy through his website at KnessetJeremy.com or through Twitter at TheJeremyMan. Thank you for being with us, Jeremy Saltan. And thank you, everybody.